I'd like to reflect today on Christmas Day on the uniqueness of Christianity. But I want to do it in a unique way, in a different way than a pastor typically would, by speaking in secular language about what distinguishes Christianity from other religions or just other ways of thinking about the human condition. So let's begin with the human condition itself. If I were to say to you that things in the world are not as they ought to be, I don't think you would disagree. I don't think anyone would disagree. And what that means is that we really live on two levels. The level of the way things are, sort of down here, and the way things ought to be. Perfection, perfect beauty, perfect truth, perfect goodness, and so on. And there is a gap or chasm between the way things are and the way things ought to be. Now, how do we transcend? How do we cross that chasm? How do we improve the human condition, if you will? Now, most of the religions of the world have an answer, and that is that you construct a sort of a ladder that helps you to ascend, if you may say, from the human level, down here, the way things are, to the divine level, the level of perfection, the way things ought to be. And the ladder is a ladder of virtue. You try to climb up that ladder, and different human beings may get to different levels on the ladder, but the idea is we try to move upward toward, you might say, heaven, toward God. Now, Christianity is the only religion, if you call it a religion, that disputes this premise. It agrees that you've got this enormous chasm, but it disagrees that the chasm can be crossed from the human side. In other words, sure, some guy can get up to level 7 on the ladder, another guy to level 3, but in the end it doesn't make that much of a difference. If the chasm is going to be crossed, it has to be crossed from the other side. In other words, God has to descend, or you may say condescend, to the human level. And that is the only way to bridge this terrifying gap. And this brings us to the way that God does that. He does that through his Son. Jesus descends, you may say, to the level of earth. He becomes a man. He lives, in a sense, the human condition. And in this way we can participate, one might say, in the kind of divine perfection that is available only through Jesus himself. Now, none of this is to establish the truth of Christianity, but it is to say that Christianity thinks about the world completely differently than every other religion, every other system of thought. And all I ask you on this Christmas Day is to give it some thought yourself.